Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Friday for Future session of the OBX Wave Report. I am Robert Scribbler, your wave reporter on all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle, and I am sitting here in the warm, wonderful Lincani household, enjoying myself a cup of coffee, sitting with my kittens, warming myself up after a morning surf session with a friend here on the Outer Banks and having a wonderful day with my wife, who works so hard for all the good creatures of this world in her work for animal advocacy. And here we are also, even as we surf, advocating for coastal defense. And this picture is a shot I filmed this morning looking southeast from Jeanette's Pier into the stormy dawn. We see the gray clouds overhead, a touch of pink from the sunrise, and tall 4 to 7 foot waves roaring in toward the coastline. We did get out into the water today and have a little freeze your patootie off surf session with a new surfer, and hope to get in the water with my wife as well, possibly this weekend, possibly going further south, heading toward where the warmer waters are. So good stuff ahead. But whenever I see the dawn, I also think about the future, and I think about the troubles, particularly here on the coastline, that face us in the form of sea level rise and more intense storms driven by climate change. And um, and I also think about how we got here. And so this is going to be a hybrid OBX Wave Report Friday for Future episode. And we're going to start out talking about a little bit about how we got here. So let's go ahead and start off with the Friday for Future blurbs. And Greta Thunberg is the lady on point, our good leader, a member of the new generation, which, if fossil fuel burning is not halted, they will see very terrible impacts. But I just would like to say that people in my generation, Gen X, as they reach their elderly years, if fossil fuel burning is not halted, our elderly years will look rather bad. So we really need to listen both to the youth activists and be concerned for ourselves, for our own future, and work very hard to transition to clean energy, because as Greta Thunberg notes here in this week 38 post, I'm sorry, 238 post, and week 238 climate strike, tomorrow is too late. And I've talked about this again and again and again, but the center of gravity of the climate crisis is fossil fuel burning. And the center of gravity of fossil fuel burning, and what perpetuates fossil fuel burning, is, I would say, greed and corruption of an industry that has long since lived past its usefulness and helpfulness to global civilization, and has become a resource curse upon us all. And I mean, there's really not much more that you can say as you look at how fossil fuels are fueling a genocidal war in Ukraine, fueling a corrupt Republican Party here in the United States, fueling so many dictatorships around the world. And right now also appears to be fueling a corrupt abuse of the social media site Twitter by Elon Musk, who was formerly well known as being a leader in clean energy, but appears to have gotten in bed with various bad actors, including petrostates like Saudi Arabia, and possibly even receiving money from Russia for his Twitter takeover, which has which he has used Twitter to promote harmful propaganda. So just a few notes on how fossil fuel money dictatorship has created a long thread of corruption through our world, and one that is visible today. And everything from the Trump insurrection to the Ukraine invasion, to the intransigence of the GOP, to the Supreme Court attacking the Environmental Protection Agency, the right-wing extremist Supreme Court, the same Supreme Court that has set women's rights back decades in our country. Um, so it all has a common thread. And here, I'd just like to read this quote by Bill McKibben on this Friday for Future. Big oil at best amoral and nothing, big oil is at best amoral and nothing highlights that more than its long embrace of Putin. Svetlana Romanko is a great moral figure arguing for a working future for us all. Svetlana has long spoken out against both fossil fuels and the harmful dictatorship in Russia. She is the director for Razum We Stand, and a Ukrainian environmental lawyer and climate campaigner. And she focuses on the subjects of war, climate crisis, and the clean energy revolution, and is an ally for the mass deploying of clean energy. I encourage you to follow Svetlana and help to support her causes. And here in this tweet that Bill McKibben is retweeting, she states, Bill McKibben and I will tell CERAWeek how it is. With their on-point wrap-up op-ed in the influential Houston Chronicle, fossil fuels fund war, chaos, and crisis. Renewable energy provides geopolitical and energy security and a livable planet. And yep, so the moral and the just are promoting clean energy, and it's one of the reasons why we at the OBX Wave Report here follow them, and we beat this drum every day, um, and implore everyone to do everything they can to help transition us all to clean energy, a more livable and a more just planet. So I thought I would highlight this quote by Bill McKibben and Svetlana on this Friday for Future. And then I also want to highlight this exchange brought forward by Aaron Rupar here on Twitter, um, which is interesting because present owner of Twitter does deserve a lot of criticism and perhaps more scrutiny for how he got the money to buy Twitter. And as Plaskett noted in some exchange on in Congress yesterday, did you know that Elon Musk received part of the funding for buying Twitter from Saudi Arabia and Qatar? Schellenberger. I heard that. Yeah, and there's a number of questions about how Elon Musk got the funding to buy Twitter and then turned around and used it to promote disinformation from a number of bad actors aligned with the fossil fuel industry. And it does appear that, unfortunately, that petrostates put money behind the purchase of Twitter. Again, tainting Musk, who had previously branded himself as a leader in clean energy, present CEO of Tesla, and in my opinion, shouldn't be. He in his purchase of Twitter and receiving money from harmful petrostates to buy Twitter pretty clearly has stood against the stated mission of Tesla to help speed the world's transition to clean energy. And that has effectively done that. I will say that. And we should have some nuance here on the issue of Tesla, because Tesla itself is a leader in clean energy. But clearly, Elon Musk has allowed himself to be corrupted by fossil fuel bad actors. And so, just to highlight this on this Friday for Future. Why am I so focused on this? It's I'm living here on the coastline, and my future is threatened as well. I want to have more than 10, 15, 20 years of good life, here on the Outer Banks. And if the fossil fuel burning continues and the corrupt dictatorships, the petro dictatorships have their way, not only could I lose my coastline, but so much more, as we saw with the Capitol insurrection. We could lose our democracies. And as we saw with the genocidal invasion of Ukraine by Putin, the fossil fuel resource curse is bringing back the darkness of history. But we also need to think about our future and the next generation. And I've had the good fortune of being able to teach a lot of people how to surf, and recently helping you know up and coming bright young person learn how to surf as well. And I want this person's future to be good and bright and positive and prosperous. And so, look to the younger generation and do what we can to protect them. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so focused on this as well. And all right, so let's get into the wave report here. And I'm going to show you a picture from the nose of my surfboard this morning as a wave's about to break on my head and about to do a little duck dive here, just about to submerge the nose. The nose is heading down submarine wise to get under this wave. And we did have some rough waves down there at Jeanette's Pier today. We did get into the waves with some good fun. I didn't get much in the way of riding because I was out there being, watch and safety for new surfer trainee. So, but I did I did paddle out and push through a little bit of water here and turn around and get a little bit of a ride. All right, so let's get into the wave report on this Friday for Future. And in this wave report, we're going to discuss waves for the Outer Banks. We're going to discuss weather for the lower 48, in particular for in extreme weather. And we're going to also discuss weather for the North Atlantic and the Arctic. And we're going to talk a little bit of climate. And I'm going to start out talking about a river of moisture that is headed toward California. And California right now is under the gun for some really severe stuff on the way. And I mean, it's looking pretty nasty again for California, as once again, a massive river of moisture gets dredged up from the tropics and is hurled toward California on the back of a warmer than normal central Pacific Ocean that is spawning storms that rush in to tap the energy from this river of moisture and then hurl it into California. So you can see this. There is a likely climate fingerprint on this river of moisture. The northern hemisphere, as I noted yesterday from the reports from a climatologist, is 1.6 degrees Celsius above normal as of yesterday. And that means that the water vapor loading for the northern hemisphere is very high. And that's not even. This extra water vapor loading is disproportionately right now hitting California. So there is a climate fingerprint on this event in Southern California from a water vapor standpoint. And of course, we will wait for the climate experts to analyze any extreme events before we draw a full conclusion, but moisture loading is a clear result of a warming atmosphere that's driven by fossil fuel burning. And right now, California is under the gun. I did want to highlight um, this trend here, and I did just realize I didn't have the NOAA QPF, oh, here it is. Okay, I'm gonna move it back. um, and yeah, okay, sorry. I did want to talk about what California is looking at, and we've had daily significant precipitation potentials over the next 7 days, and this is the case, particularly in the mountain ranges. And right now, California is receiving some rather severe precipitation, particularly in the mountain regions. All right, so looking at the lower 48, we see this train of moisture moving into central California right now in association with that atmospheric river getting tapped by a low pressure system moving in to the west coast. And then here in the east, I promise we'll get to the Outer Banks. Here in the east, we've got a storm system sweeping in as well that is predicted to trigger gale or near gale force conditions along the coastline tonight and into tomorrow as a low pressure system strengthens across the US East Coast and forms a bit of a nor'easter. Now, looking at the infrared satellite shot, we can see that river of moisture hurling tall storms into California, dumping series of rain and snow events for Central California today, and then feeding up over the Rockies, fueling our next storm system that's expected to run through the central US. And then we have a strong front that's coming through the southeast right now that's expected to, and a low pressure system over the Great Lakes that's expected to transfer its energy over the North Atlantic here, tap into those warmer than normal Gulf Stream waters, and produce a nor'easter type system off the US East Coast. And right now we've got gale warnings up for the East Coast, running from about Wilmington, North Carolina on northward through Long Island. The rains are sweeping in through the southeast. We've got snows over the Great Lakes heading toward the northeast. And out west, you can just see all of these alerts popping up for winter weather advisories, flood watches, just all over the place here in California. California is lit up like a Christmas tree with flood watches and warnings as these storms continue to funnel in off that atmospheric river. And here up in the northern tier, looks like we've got some blizzard warnings for parts of North Dakota and Montana, as well as some of that moisture spills over the Rockies and heads on into the northern tier of the United States. All right, so let's get down to the coastline and talk OBX. And right now we've got some pretty big waves on the coast. We've experienced that this morning here at Jeanette's Pier. And we are going to start at Jeanette's Pier right now, where waves are in the range of 4 to 7 feet. Winds right now are out of the south-southeast at 13 miles per hour, which is a cross onshore flow. It was more out of the southeast when I was down there, so I guess the winds are canting more to the south as the day goes by. Swell coming in at 14 seconds from the northeast at 5 feet, and apparently that 5-foot swell is lining up rather well to produce those 4 to 7 foot waves. Temperatures right now are 51 degrees in the air and in the ocean, so air and ocean the same temperature right now. Air was actually a little bit colder than the ocean this morning, so it actually felt a little bit warm getting into the ocean, which is odd. Present weather conditions are light rain, then then strong winds coming in from first the south and then whipping around to the northwest as we get into the day tomorrow, possibly near gale force here at Jeanette's Pier, and the expected high today of 54. Now I'm going to go on down the coastline. We've got some good waves at Rodanth and like in the range of 3 to 4, 3 to 5 feet, as well as in the Cape Hatteras National Seashore location, 3 to 5 feet. And then getting down to Avon, the waves kick up even more, getting up to a 4 to 7 foot range with light southeast winds at 9 miles per hour. The primary swell is coming in at 6 feet at 13 seconds out of the northeast, lining up pretty well with the coastline there and likely pretty hollow waves. Temperatures right now at Avon at 52 degrees. Ocean water temperatures at 58, so warmer down there. And I'm going to provide a couple more locations because I do want to. I haven't hit any of the south-facing beaches in a while, so we're going to do that. But first, we're going to hit Buxton. And right now, the waves at Buxton are very tall, at 7 to 9 feet, and we expect those waves to build throughout the day to possibly 10 to 12 feet by late this afternoon, early evening. So really big waves expected for Buxton today. And big already at Buxton, 7 to 9 feet. Winds out of the south-southeast at 11 miles per hour. That is onshore. Waves coming in out of the northeast at 11-second period, 5-foot swell. Must be lining up very well there at Buxton to produce those 7 to 9 foot waves. Air temperatures are 53 degrees Fahrenheit, ocean water temperatures 61 degrees Fahrenheit. And for the weather, we expect light rain to continue and near gale force winds by evening, high today of 59. And for our last location, we're going to go down to Frisco, where waves are considerably smaller in the range of 1 to 2 feet. We've got 11 mile per hour winds coming in out of the south-southeast. And the primary swell coming in out of the east-southeast at 9 seconds. That's a 3-foot swell. It's kind of coming in cross shore, so it's having to turn to line up, so you got much smaller waves after the swell turns in towards shore. And then air temperatures right now also at 53 degrees. Ocean water temperatures also at 61 and a high around 60 today at Frisco. All right, so let's get into some of the larger weather and climate conditions for the North American continent. And I did think that we might have had some ingredients for a nor'easter earlier this week and last week, but it does seem that those ingredients for a potentially powerful nor'easter have faded out. So it looks like we're out of the woods here on the Outer Banks for potentially like really powerful nor'easter. This does not mean that we won't experience nor'easter conditions. In fact, this week we might have a somewhat mild nor'easter here in the Outer Banks, but nothing too crazy appears to be in the forecast as far as like bomb cyclones off the US East Coast. And that is good. We continue to, however, have warm air invasions of the Arctic, and a cold remnant is expected to push through the southeast over the coming days. And we might still get some severe weather firing off in various forms as that cold air slams into the warmer than normal ocean regions that are much warmer than normal, particularly over the Gulf of Mexico and over the Gulf Stream. So we'll still have to keep a weather eye to that. Looking at the anomaly map, we do see that zone of much warmer than normal temperatures up over the North American continent, running in through parts of Baffin Bay. And we do see this residual cold pool, this remnant cold pool forced off the Arctic by the warm air invasion. And I'm just going to go ahead and advance this model so you can see how the cold air gets injected over the US East, where colder than normal temperatures are expected to remain for most of the next 7 days. And I'm just going to go ahead and advance this model to show you that cold air invasion over the US East. And this will tend to help provide some energy for storms in the Atlantic Ocean. And you can kind of see these storms swirling up as a dance between hot and cold here in the central North Atlantic and heading on north toward Greenland. And that has been a pretty standard condition, a pretty consistent condition for most of the past month. And looking at the anomalies over the 7-day forecast, you can see that here in the Outer Banks, it's expected to be a bit cooler than normal with that remnant cold pushed out of the Arctic. All right, looking at the quantitative prediction forecast, we have already done that a little bit. California is under the gun for some very severe weather, very heavy precipitation over the next 7 days. Parts of the Rockies as well. Central U.S. From Texas on northward, a little bit less in the way of precipitation, particularly for the south. And then in the Mississippi River Valley, there's some potential for severe weather and enhanced precipitation. And off the U.S. East Coast, also some enhanced potential for nor'easters. And you can see that in the precipitation model forecast as well. Looking at the Climate Prediction Center's 8 to 14-day outlooks, we expect cooler than normal conditions to remain over the U.S. for that period, with cooler than normal conditions here over the Outer Banks, and generally above normal precipitation predicted for most of the U.S., with the exception being the Great Lakes region and parts of the northern tier of the U.S., which is expected to remain near normal. Looking at the convective outlook for the next 3 days, we do have some enhanced risk of severe storms running from Texas through the southeast over the next 3 days. This is not crazy risk for severe storms, but nonetheless, we should keep a weather eye as conditions develop and listen to our weather experts and our local emergency management should any big storms threaten. All right, looking at the global forecast system model, we do have a low pressure associated with a front that's about to sweep through the US East. This is going to transfer energy offshore, and we're going to get a nor'easter type storm that gets a bit retrograde. So we're going to have strong northerly winds here across the Outer Banks tomorrow, and yeah, for much of the day tomorrow, and then with the storm heading offshore as we get into Sunday. And then as we get into Monday, we have another impulse coming through with a coastal low. And this coastal low looks pretty nor'easterish, not crazy bomb cyclone nor'easterish, but we've got another likely nor'easter type storm by Monday that then sweeps on offshore, doesn't linger for too long, heads offshore and then transfers energy toward the coastline on Tuesday for the U.S. Northeast. And it looks like U.S. Northeast might get very heavy snows, possible blizzard type conditions as this storm button hooks back in toward the northeast before dancing around on Wednesday and finally heading offshore on Thursday. And then as we get into the later portion of the week, we've got another front heading toward the Outer Banks with some cold weather, cold air embedded, possibly snows as far south as north central North Carolina. So it looks like a pretty cold front coming in, but no snows here for the Outer Banks. Possible severe weather offshore, but no major type nor'easter storm spinning up out of that front. And then we get the progression of storms out west with another system firing up over the central US and then heading north toward the Great Lakes. And we do have consistent severe weather over parts of the Mississippi River Valley and another series of coastal lows toward the end of the model. So again, definitely a tendency for nor'easter formation, but thankfully no major bomb cyclones in the forecast. And that is good, especially with that cold air slamming into hot. All right, now let's get back to the coastlines and do some wave forecast. I'm going to choose a point here off of Buxton. Right now we've got significant wave heights off of Buxton in the range of about, make sure we're on now. Yep, in the range of about 6 feet. Tomorrow these waves are expected to build up as a nor'easter type storm begins to form with 8-foot significant wave heights tomorrow. And then as we get into Sunday, we've got that nor'easter that really kicks up and we get nearly 10-foot significant wave heights off Buxton and large waves for most of the Outer Banks with that nor'easter just offshore. It looks like maybe translating to 10 to 12 foot waves on the coastline at Buxton on Sunday. And then into Monday, as we get another coastal impulse coming through, wave heights remaining in the range of about 8 to 9 feet offshore, so tall waves into Monday. And then into Tuesday, waves starting to tamp down a bit in the 6 foot range in the near offshore environment. And that's a comprehensive look at the wave picture for the Outer Banks in the model forecast. So thank you for joining me for this Friday for Future edition of the OBX Wave Report. I mashed the Friday for Future stuff up into the Wave Report. Um, we have not had the opportunity to do a um, charity activist organization focus recently for Friday for Future, and we will remedy that either next week or the following week. And so we'll get back onto that beat as well. But on this Friday for Future, please help everyone, including yourself, by doing everything you can to speed the mass deployment of clean energy and turning away from fossil fuels. This will help to defend our coastlines from the impacts of climate change driven by fossil fuel burning, the impacts being sea level rise and more severe storms. And it will also help to defend our democracies from the malicious influence of bad actor dictatorships that are primarily funded by fossil fuels. And the corruption that we see around us if we are woke, which is a good thing, if we see clearly, um, they are the impacts are visible, obviously visible to anyone who's not lying to themselves. So thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report. I really appreciate all of you. And if you do get out into the cold March air to enjoy some of those big, gnarly waves today, I hope you shred it up. I hope you're careful. And I hope to see you out there. So thank you once again.